that is a Canvas thing. For some reason, Canvas on these quizzes this year has decided to just post you guys not having points awarded for those. It used to like wait until I went in and manually put stuff before it posted anything. It would basically tell you it's awaiting grading. For some reason this year what it's doing is it's telling you, hey, you haven't been given any points, so here's your 0, and it does that right away. Nobody has a 0 in this class on that assignment. I just haven't graded it yet. I will get to that this week. I was hoping to get to that this morning, and then this morning I had to go out and pick up some supplies for the class. And it ended up taking a lot longer than I was expecting, and so I'm behind on a few things for where I wanted to be. Just as a heads up, in general, if you ever see an assignment that you have turned in and your grade shows up as a 0, that means one of two things. It means either I haven't graded it or I'm not aware that you submitted it, right? So if it's a matter of grading, like wait a little bit, check with me when you come to class. If it's one like this where you get the 0 right away and you know you submitted it through Canvas, Canvas says you've submitted it, it's probably just that I haven't graded it yet. If you turn something in 3 weeks late or 4 weeks late and you have a 0, there's a possibility that I am not aware that you submitted it. So if you're turning in stuff that's really late, make sure you communicate that to me to say, hey, I got this in. If you can check, make sure that you get it graded, right? I can handle that. Any questions about Canvas, about grading, about any of those things? Okay. So on Canvas right now is a module, and actually let me make sure it actually posted. Because I just did it during lunch and I'm not sure. Okay, sorry, now it should show up. At the top of your modules page in Canvas, you should have a module that's just titled Local Opportunities. This will be a module that will grow as the year goes on. The one that I have in there right now is a opportunity for blacksmithing. I think we talked about blacksmithing in this class on Friday briefly, right? So this, did we talk about this? Did I mention this to you on Friday?
Talk about something.
Okay, so the South Dakota School of Mines has an opportunity for you guys to go do some blacksmithing. So they have open forge time is what I think they call it. That's what I put in here, so hopefully that's what they call it. But it's open forge time on Tuesdays and Fridays from 3 p.m. to 6 p.m. And the way it works is Professor Mike West, who's up there, his contact information is in that tab. You can contact him. His office number is in there as well. So if you're interested in going, I would shoot him an email giving him a heads up that you were planning on coming and that you were told to stop by his office first. His office is MI 108. I have no idea where on the campus that is. So that's one of the reasons I recommend you contact him. I think that cell phone number is one that you can send a text to as well. Or that phone number anyway. One you can text him at. But if you are interested in going down, so they'll have that today from 3 to 6 and Friday 3 to 6. You can go down, he'll get you lined up, introduce you to some people down there. I actually plan on trying to get out there hopefully on Friday to get just some exposure on my own end, to be able to see what that looks like so that I can give you guys better information. If you go and you really like it, there's an opportunity to be part of a competition. Registration for that competition is not until November, so you have some time to at least go try it out and see, and then Professor West can give you some additional information. There's the flyer there, there's his email there, there's all the information that I think you should need. Does anybody have any questions about that? Okay, anybody interested? How many of you guys are interested in doing that maybe?
It would be cool.
Okay, so I will try to go get more information on Friday.
Wait, is that free?
I think it's free. Yeah, they didn't say anything about a cost. I'm sure they would have told me if there was a cost. So, yeah, usually these universities a lot of times will do this kind of stuff to get folks excited about coming because you get to see some cool things. So I think this is an opportunity that's worth checking out if you are interested in metalwork.
Wait, when is it?
Tuesdays and Fridays.
Oh, for like a long time?
Yeah, I think it's just a standard thing that they have. So, yeah.
I think next Tuesday. I'm down. I'll take you.
Okay, so there's also a Western Prototype Welding one. I'll post some of that information there.
Really?
I will let you guys know as well. I know a lot of you guys have contacts in the local area as well for companies that are looking to provide opportunities to people in the construction realm. If you guys find out about something, you're more than welcome to bring that to me and I can post it on Canvas as well. This will serve kind of like a job listing page a little bit, except it won't all be jobs. A lot of it will be these kind of free opportunities to just go get some exposures to things.
So basically, it's just like a post.
Yeah, like a bulletin board. It's like, that's probably what I should call it. The Construction and Technical Trades Bulletin Board. Okay. So, I think that covers Canvas stuff. Anybody have questions about this class, about grades, about assignments, about any of those things? Yeah.
Has the thing been graded yet? The thing we did in Chief Architect?
No, I haven't graded any of your guys' stuff from last week, so I have like a whole bunch for this class, for the construction classes to grade. But I will get those done this week. You guys should see numbers starting to populate hopefully tomorrow morning. Okay. So that is that. What our plans are for this week, so that everybody is tracking. It sounds like a lot of people might be out on Thursday. How many of you guys are here or out on Thursday? Is anybody not here on Thursday? Okay. So we will try to get you guys caught up when you guys get back. What we're going to do today is we're going to talk safety. I will explain how we are going to approach the safety lessons in this class. We're going to talk about safety, my general expectations. Then during the second half of class, or the latter half of class, we're going to spend some time having you guys learn about concrete. On Thursday, our lessons on concrete will continue, but only a portion of that will be here in the classroom. We'll spend a little bit of the portion in here. Then we'll move out into the shop, and we'll start getting you guys lined out on doing some stuff with your hands. That is the plan for this week, and then hopefully once we get rolling on stuff out in the shop, that we can spend the majority of the time for the rest of the year out there. And we'll still have lessons that will take place in here. We'll always start class in here, but hopefully we can spend more time out in the shop than we do in the classroom moving forward. Okay, any questions on that front? All right, so let's talk safety, because safety is something that we have to start with here at the beginning of the year. Well, at the beginning of, like, before we head out to the shop. So what we will be doing is that we will be breaking safety up, kind of spread out all throughout the year. What I don't want to do is I don't want to give you, when I was in college and we did our safety class, I had a safety class, we got OSHA certified, and it was just all the things safety, and then at the end of it, trying to remember everything that we talked about was none of it was relevant at the time, right? Like we learned about it when we weren't learning about the particular stuff, and so it was basically memorizing facts. What we'll be doing in here is we will be talking today about my general safety rules that will just kind of apply to all aspects of being in the shop. And then as we move into different units, what will happen is there will be smaller lessons about safety. So what we'll do is that when we're talking about welding, for example, which won't actually happen until second semester, but when we're talking about welding, you will have a lesson on welding safety. There will also be a test that you will be given for welding safety, and you will have to get 100% on that welding test before you get to start welding. When I teach you a new tool, so there's not a ton of tools that we'll use in here, but we use things like circular saws and grinders and chop saws. When I teach you the safety requirements for those tools, many of those will come with a safety quiz that you will have to fill out and pass before you would be allowed to use that tool or to participate in that particular unit. The safety test will always be a requirement at 100%, which means you will get to take the test as many times as you want. But you can't, so there'll be a quiz today that you will take. Don't think that you can take it, fill in just random answers, and then hopefully just be told like what you got wrong and what you got right, and then go back and do it again. I have it set up so that it will actually just tell you your score, but it won't tell you which questions you missed. That is by design, because what I don't want is I don't want you to get test takers on this. I want you to actually know the material And if you keep missing the questions because you keep swapping your answer, it means you don't know the material. So that's how we'll handle it. Okay. Any questions before I proceed? All right. So here's what I want you guys to do for me is that most of the stuff that we're going to talk about safety, I think, is fairly intuitive and common sense, right? That these are things that you should be able to figure out for the most part on your own, what my expectations. And I don't think there's going to be a whole lot of surprises. So rather than me just tell you what my expectations are, what I want is for you to tell me what kinds of rules you would set up, or in other words, what I'm really having you do is try to guess what my rules are, right? Then that way we can have some discussion about it. So when we talk about general safety rules, and I'm not talking like what are the safety steps for operating a circular saw, I'm just talking about general safety rules. What are some of the general safety rules that you think we are going to have?
Wear protective gear.
Okay, so protective gear. So you will hear me talk about PPE. You will hear that acronym a ton in the construction field. Does anybody know what PPE stands for? Personal protective equipment. So what are some of the personal protective equipment or PPE that are going to be a big part of this class, Anthony?
Shoes that cover your toes.
Okay, good. You should always have closed-toed shoes when you come to this class. There's very few things I'm going to let you guys do in flip-flops. Gavin, I think your hand's been up for a little while.
Glasses. Okay,
so safety glasses. Let's talk about safety glasses. Here is my expectation as far as safety glasses go. When we are in the shop, and when anybody in the shop is using a tool that could send things flying or that would require the need for safety glasses, generally what will happen is that everyone in the shop will be wearing safety glasses. Any ideas why I would set the rule up that way?
So we don't lose our eyes.
Okay, so I don't want you to lose your eyes. That is an important one, Gavin.
Sometimes you're like walking by something happens.
Okay, good. When we're talking about eye safety, I brought this tool in here because this is one that's probably one of the more dangerous ones that you'll use. Anybody know what this is?
What's up?
Sander. Yeah, so or a grinder. So we can put sanding wheels on this, but we can also right now it has a grinding wheel on it. So this will be used for doing grinding. Is what we're going to use it for is grinding. So what happens with this tool is there's this wheel on here. This wheel spins super, super fast, and it spins fast enough to grind down metal. Destiny and Carson, I need to know that I got your guys' attention. So when this goes, it gets, not only does it spin fast and can cut open, it also gets really hot. I use this as an example also because I used to work with a guy who was using one of these. It kicked back, hit him in the shoulder, and the heat was enough that it actually cauterized the wound as it cut him open, which was great for controlling the amount of blood. Not great for other reasons, right? There are going to be a lot of tools that, like this, where they are spinning and they are going to potentially shoot projectiles off and send things flying, particularly like if one of these blades breaks down or if you guys use it wrong and it sends a chunk flying. You can be clear on the other end of the room and still get hit in the eye. Even when we're doing stuff that doesn't require that, I'll probably require you guys to wear glasses almost all the times that we're out there because it also develops a habit of putting on safety glasses. The number one thing that I had to remind people last year was to put on their safety glasses. So I want that to be a habit when we get out there.
Do you wear them over regular glass?
Yeah, so we have some that will hopefully fit over you guys' regular glasses, which is another one of those questions. Unless you can bring me something that shows me that your glasses meet like these safety shatter resistant requirements, you will be required to wear safety glasses over top of those. That I know that's annoying. I know it's not ideal, but that's just how we have to operate because if you don't have the right glasses and something hits you in the eye, it's potentially more dangerous, right? Because now you have projectiles breaking your glasses and then getting additional things in your eye. There's a lot of stuff. This is one of the examples I also use because we'll be doing a lot of metal work in the kind of the final quarter. Anybody ever gotten metal in their eyes, like metal shavings or metal? Yeah. So, what was the experience with that?
It was not painful.
It hurts
Yeah.
super bad.
It's awful. It hurts, and if you don't find out that it's metal early on, your eye is very moist, and when metal gets wet, it rusts, and then it can cause all kinds of infectious issues. And left untreated long enough can cause actual permanent damage, right? There's a lot of things that if we do them wrong in here can cause permanent damage. If you chop your finger off with a saw, there's no guarantee that that finger is getting reattached,
It
right?
can happen though.
It can happen.
That'd be a really cool
but
story.
let's not
though,
find
like,
out.
missing a
My,
finger.
my cousin, he like brewed his beer, and he had this thing where like the bottle shattered it on his finger, and it was just like hanging off with
Ew.
some of the skin, and it was really bad, but they got it back out.
Okay.
Well, have you
And
seen
it made the
I-
joint shorter
Have
than
you seen
it
the
was, but
package
it's
on
there.
Netflix?
I am hoping that never becomes an issue in here. If you did chop your finger off here, it would certainly be shorter because there's a good chance you're
Have you seen the
your
package
bone.
on Netflix?
Yeah. Anyway, so safety glasses. Wear your safety glasses. Other expectations, general expectations that you guys think I'm going to have for while we're out in the shop. Daniel?
Short sleeve, because if your sleeve's too long, it could get caught in something.
Yeah, so this, we're going to kind of pull on that thread a little bit. So there are situations where short sleeves might be better. There's also going to be some situations where we have to adjust based on what we're doing, right? So when we're working with heat and we're working with things like sparks, so there's going to be times where I'll actually require that you guys have full sleeves and that your arms aren't bare to protect from burning. There will be other times like all your student IDs that you guys have around your necks. If I ever see anybody wearing a student ID hanging around their neck while they're working one of these, I am immediately going to put an end to you using this and make sure that that student ID comes off, right? Any ideas why?
If it gets caught in there, your face is
Yeah, so this is pulling it right up. Even if you have those ones that break away, if that breakaway doesn't happen right away, it's hard to stop this like quick motion back towards your face, right? So there'll be some things that one of the things that's important to talk about when we talk about safety is that safety is not the same for every activity, right? There are some activities where I'm going to expect you to wear gloves, and other activities where wearing gloves wouldn't make any sense, right? Like if you were trying to nail small little tiny nails and wear big bulky gloves, you are potentially creating more hazards than you are helps. So the attire that you're going to wear is going to depend very much on the activity. The safety procedures that you're going to have are going to depend very much on the activity. What that means for you guys is that you need to follow my instructions for each activity and not just follow, hey, we had to wear this with the last one, so obviously this is what we wear for this activity, right? Okay, what other expectations?
Common sense.
Okay, good.
Like the gas
Good. What are
station.
some of the situations where common sense comes into play?
Don't touch things that are hot.
Okay, good. Don't touch things that are hot.
Don't put your mouth on it.
When you're working with like a cutting blade, for example, you want to make sure your fingers aren't going to slide into the blade accidentally.
Okay, so in the last class, somebody shared an example of somebody they knew who they were using a table saw, and they were cutting a small piece, and the piece had kind of like fallen in between the saw and the table, kind of in that groove, and they went to go reach and grab it, not thinking about it, and sliced open their pinky finger or something like that. Those kinds of accidents are super, super common, right? So there's going to be a lot of common sense things that sometimes you don't realize how common sense it is till after you do it. So one of the things that we're going to just feed into you guys is the safety. I know that a lot of you have used these tools beforehand. How many of you guys have used power tools outside of this class? I think this one was like most of you, right?
I think there's a horn or something.
Okay, so most of you have used power tools outside of this class. One thing that I will lay out right at the get-go is that if you come to me and you say, hey, can I use the circular saw? And I have not shown you how I want you to operate that circular saw, I will probably tell you no. And you may be tempted to say, but I've used the circular saw like a million times. I know how to use a circular saw. And my response will probably be, I don't care. It is great that you guys have this experience outside the classroom, and most of you are probably taught correct principles, but I have worked in enough job sites and been in enough places to know that many of you have used these tools and been taught incorrect principles for how to operate these tools. Additionally, even if you've been taught correct principles, the rules that I will have in here in this class may be more strict than what you would have to follow on a job site. That's for two reasons. One is I don't want you guys getting hurt, and because I can't monitor everybody, right? This is like not my biggest construction class, but this is still a decent number of people, right? How many fingers do we have in this room?
At least 10.
Good. Yeah, we have at least 10 fingers in this room. Let's see, what do we have? How many students? 6, 10. Yeah, we have almost 20 students in here. We've got like 200 fingers in this room. That's a lot of fingers to keep my eyes on when you guys are out in this big shop.
There's plenty of spares. We'll be okay.
That's true. There are a lot of spares. Which brings me to my next concern is that even if you guys are okay losing a finger, I am not okay getting sued because you lost a finger.
What if it's a dare?
Trust
Who's to say we won't sue?
How many of you guys are 18?
Yeah.
Yeah, Sterling's the only one in the room that can actually sue me.
You're 18.
So even if you say I'm not going to sue you, your parents can sue me on your behalf. When people lose fingers, they change their tune about like I'm not going to sue you. They feel very differently about those
Make
things.
us sign a waiver saying our parents won't sue you.
Yeah, well, we could have a whole lesson about waivers and all that kind of stuff, but we'll
How about we just
avoid
don't?
having that
My
conversation.
dad wouldn't sue you. He'd be like, "Oh, I told you not to do that." But my mom would be such a dick with that.
Okay, wow. All right, so moving on. Whether you guys are okay with it or not, sometimes I will have some additional safety rules, and that's just because there are a lot of people that I have to monitor, and a lot of you who are not experienced with using these tools may do things, and sometimes actually some of you who are too experienced may be overly confident with these. I have to be able to keep eyes on people as they're working. That's basically impossible for me to keep an eye on everybody in this class. So I have to know that you guys are operating safely, and that's why I give rules that are sometimes more strict than otherwise. Okay, other rules. Other rules that you guys think I need in this classroom. Jacob. Okay.
Not build square.
Yeah. So when we get to the welding, there are going to be some rules about like some of the attire. So that when we get to the welding, I'll give you like those specifics for that kind of stuff.
Hair put back?
Yeah. So not a ton of you have longer hair, but that is going to be one of the things. So this kind of goes along with the name tags. If you have things you don't want attire or hair that can get caught in things. What else? So we talked about eyeglasses. How about if there's an injury? How do you guys think I want injuries handled in this class?
Don't tell you.
Forget about it.
You
Suck it up.
push it off to the side.
Yeah.
Wipe the dirt on it.
Yeah.
You pick up the blood and color.
Can I call my mommy? I need that
Okay,
pizza.
so good. I have covered this with you. So Gavin, did everyone hear what Gavin said?
No.
Don't tell you.
So you guys should tell me about injuries, even if you think it's a minor injury, even if you think like, oh, it's just a paper cut, no big deal. You guys won't get paper cuts, I don't think, out there, but you might get cut by metal, right? Here's the deal. I'm not a medical professional. You're not medical professionals. Some of you may be medical professionals someday and look back and think like, man, that was really ridiculous that Mr. Hoffman sent me to the nurse when I got XYZ injury, right? I am sure that there will be people in this class that will experience minor injury. That happens. If there's blood, you should come let me know. What I will probably do is I will probably send you down to the nurse. The nurse will probably get annoyed by me sending people down, but the nurse is the medical professional, so we're going to send you to the medical professional to make sure that you are good to go. I think last year I sent folks down that would get these splinters, and they wanted tweezers to pull their splinter out, and I said, you could just go down to the nurse. The nurse would make them pull their own splinter out. Just know, I might be ridiculous about this. but it's important that you guys are taken care of. It's important that none of you go home with injuries that are going to fester and become bigger problems, right? So as an example, you guys know this is kind of slightly unrelated, but you know those like fluorescent bulbs that twist into like regular outlets, like light bulbs? So those have mercury in them, right? And so, you know that I can't verify that this one is true, but I talked to somebody who had a friend who had stepped on one of those, right, and got mercury poisoning in their foot, didn't think anything of it, and then because of the mercury poisoning, ended up eventually having to have their foot amputated because they didn't get treatment in time. So sometimes these minor injuries, depending on what you were working with, may be more significant.
Because
We have to get those things, an eye on those things. Okay, any other safety things that you guys think we need to talk about?
Shouldn't you get a new tool if you tape it?
Well, I have this tape because like the old tape was like coming off and sticking to my clothes.
Well, that's a safety issue. You're gonna have to change that out.
Yeah, well, focus on your guys' safety.
What if you suit yourself?
Okay, so clothing for the first one, like I will give you some requirements. If we're
Yeah, you
doing, there's certain activities that you are going to need to
especially
wear
if you
jeans.
yourself doing
Some activities like what we're going to start later this week, you guys can be in shorts, that's fine. We're just going to be doing little concrete models and working with small, no power tools this week.
Yes.
What if
Okay.
you've already seen us
Made
use
no
some
sense,
power
huh?
tools?
That's a good question. I'm still going to make you sit through everything and pass all the tests.
No, I'm not trying to rat you out.
I know.
But last year,
Yeah.
last
No, I
year,
Yeah.
understand.
Last year I was a new
I
teacher
have
that
that
was,
shouldn't matter.
I have to
Huh?
make
That shouldn't matter.
well, last year I had a
Rules.
less time. Man, this smartest guy.
No one at
Um,
east side, west side, but I rush.
Anthony,
Uh,
I'm gonna make you do it different because I care about you more this year than I did last year.
Well, that could be a good thing and that could be a
I
bad
do
Okay.
thing.
want Rushmore different.
What other things do you,
Yeah.
general principles do you guys think? I want you to define. Yeah.
Tyler used to
play
buy
around.
for me, then he stopped.
Okay, so no horseplay. One of the things that folks got kicked out of the shop for last year was when they started horseplay, or when they started mishandling my tools that are out in the shop out there, right?
Did you still have a Walmart fridge?
True,
Yeah.
all safety.
So, if you are mishandling tools, if you are horsing around, that is the kind of thing that will get you kicked out of the shop. Any ideas what will happen if I kick you out of the shop?
principal's office.
Yeah.
You have to sit your classroom.
So that is very much a possibility, right? So if you are a repeat offender or your offense is serious enough, what I will do is I will find alternative assignments for you to work on. As a heads up, coming up with alternative assignments is not a fun activity for me. It's actually really annoying when I have to come up with stuff. Grading your alternative assignments is going to be even more annoying. So I am not going to have any fun with that, which means that if I'm not going to have fun, I am going to work pretty hard to make sure that whatever assignment I give you is also not fun. That I am going to make sure you have less fun than I do in grading that assignment. So do not be deliberately unsafe. Do not deliberately disobey instructions. Do not horseplay at a level that is going to send me over the edge, right? Now, worst case scenario is I kick you out for the whole year. A lesser case scenario is that I kick you out until you have demonstrated to me that you will be safe returning. That will usually come in the form of you giving me an assignment, explaining. So what a very common assignment might be is I might tell you that you are now writing an essay for me on some OSHA requirement, right? Then I'm going to make you look up OSHA regulations. I'm going to make you give an essay about OSHA. You're going to have to talk about the importance of that safety, all those kinds of things, right? I am guessing that nobody in here wants to do that, so don't give me a reason to make you do that. Yes.
Are phones allowed in there?
That is a great, you guys are the first class to mention phones without me having to bring it up. What would be your guess?
Yes, as long as they don't.
No.
Cause
So these are the two things that I don't ever want to see in the shop. I don't want to see earbuds or phones.
What if
Why do I not want to see phones and earbuds?
Or distraction.
Okay, so number one, is there a distraction, right? So if I have my phone out and I'm a safe distance away from everybody that's working and I'm doing this, what is the problem with that?
Everyone else not paying attention.
Hey, you're not paying attention. If we're in there and something comes flying, or if somebody else is moving through the shop, then this becomes a hazard, right? It also means you're not doing your work. And when we're talking safety in the classroom, you guys know that I'm a little bit more lenient about the cell phone thing because I need you guys to learn how to choose to work rather than be on your cell phones. In the shop, I'm going to take that choice away from you, and you just won't be on your cell phone. Why no to the earbuds?
Wait, wired or Bluetooth?
It doesn't matter.
Because you can't.
Then what if you like yelling because I cut someone's ear off and I have to listen?
Okay, good.
Can't contact.
So, yeah, so two pieces there. So Jack mentioned one, Gavin mentioned the other. One is it's a distraction, right? When you guys are out there, I don't need you thinking about something else while you're supposed to be thinking about the cut that you're making. And I also need you to be able to hear. The problem with earbuds and where this differs, because there'll be times where you guys will be wearing earplugs or ear muffs. The difference between the two is that one of those produces loud noises, so even when it's quiet around you, you may not be able to hear me. And whereas the earbuds and ear muffs will stop large decibel stuff, but you can still hear things through them, right? Yeah, they're not perfect.
Well, not. Okay, I was just wondering.
Yeah, so the earbuds, I don't want to see earbuds. I don't want to see phones in there. Those are two really great ways to get kicked out of the shop for the day and to earn yourself one of those extra assignments. Now, I had the question earlier about, like, does that mean that we have to leave our phones in the classroom? Here's the deal. If you guys have your phone in your pocket, that's fine. But don't ever bring it out of your pocket. If you don't have the self-control to leave your phone in your pocket, then don't bring your phone into the shop. Any questions on that? Okay, so we've talked about safety glasses. When are safety glasses worn?
All the time.
Yeah, just as a default, just say all the time, right? If I say you don't need to wear your safety glasses for this activity, then you cannot wear your safety glasses. Otherwise, the default will be that you always wear safety glasses. We've talked about reporting injuries. We've talked about phones. We've talked about earbuds. We've talked about horseplay. What other things can you guys think of that would be important general rules for this classroom?
Talking to someone using machinery.
Like
tapping.
like talking to somebody while they're using the machinery.
Yeah.
Okay, I thought for some reason when you first said that, I thought you meant you were gonna like try to use the machinery to create some kind of weird communication apparatus.
I mean, we could do
like
that.
communicate like via like hitting saw blades or something like that. Okay, no, the one Jack brought up is a good one. His actual one, not my misunderstanding one.
Well, they're both good.
So, and we're going to kind of talk about this along the lines of people that you recognize that are not operating safely. If you see something that's unsafe, what do you think my expectation is?
Make it safe.
Yeah.
Report it immediately.
Okay, good. In my last class, the way they put it is that we should all be snitches, and that's exactly what I want you guys to be. Not because we are trying to get people in trouble. Because my experience has been that most of the time that folks in this classroom are not operating safely, it is not because they are purposefully operating safely. It is because they are inexperienced and they have forgotten some of the rules, right? So there are situations where if you see something that's unsafe and you don't want to be the one to deal with it, all you have to do is come talk to me and say, Mr. Hoffman, this is what's going on, right? Now, along those lines, if you see that somebody's thumb is under the location of the saw blade, and they are starting this chop saw to bring down and cut a piece of wood while their thumb is in the path, do you think I want you bringing that one to me?
Hit the off button.
Yeah, in that case, you should be taking immediate action to stop it. Now, this is a hard one to talk about in terms of what we do in that scenario,
Throw a piece
right?
of metal at it.
Because the example Jack gave was talking to somebody or tapping somebody on the shoulder who's using machinery, right? So if I'm using this grinder, we'll talk about this as well, but anybody see any problems with this if this is how I'm using the grinder?
No control.
Yeah, I don't have hands on here. I'm not running safety glasses either. right? Like I don't really have control. It's clear that I'm not trying very hard to do this correctly. If somebody comes and taps me on the shoulder, what is my response?
Turn around and you cut their head off, you know?
Right? Like if I'm not thinking, so one of the
Right.
things that you don't want to do in an effort to stop unsafe behavior is you don't want to create more risks. So this is one where hopefully you guys all have common sense enough to know how to handle this, but you should use your common sense when dealing with this. If you see somebody who's about to use a saw and chop their finger off, there are some red buttons out there that kill power, right? If you are near the plug, you can unplug it. Or you could say, Sterling, stop, right? Just because that's you, you were the one I was looking at. Plus,
He's an adult.
yeah, you're the only one I can yell at. You're the only adult.
Mr. Hoffman, what would you consider like what category? You know when you're welding, you put that glue stuff in the welding tip. Like what would you consider that? Just like
Nozzle gel?
no, like
What do you put for that?
as a safety feature, like
Oh,
Like the safety
using
feature.
tools properly, cleaning
so
up.
we'll talk about that kind of like tool specific stuff, but like we'll talk about inspecting tools as like another one. Yeah.
Don't they just wear like proper?
What do you put for?
Yeah, that'll be fine. Like when we go back there, we're gonna be working with like rebar and stuff. So I don't want open toed shoes. I would for that activity. I'm not gonna post it. Okay. Any other general principles that you guys? Oh, sorry. Let me kind of finish that thought. So we're gonna come to clean up right after I finish this thought. So yeah, when you guys recognize that something unsafe is going on, use your common sense. Think about whether or not it's an imminent harm. Do you guys know what imminent means?
They're gonna get hurt.
That means like it's about to happen, right? Like so if somebody is like thumb in the way, about to pull down the saw, that's something you want to address before they chop off the thumb, rather than to come tell me, hey, somebody's about to, oh, actually, never mind, it just happened, right? So if you see an imminent threat, make sure you address that right away in the best way that you know how. If it's something that you're just like, hey, these people are kind of goofing around a little bit, I'm worried that they might do something, come talk to me. Chances are I'm like already eyes on it, and that I'm like on my way to address it. But that is something to be aware of. What else?
Pretty true.
Oh yeah, we're going to talk about cleanup. So the other piece of this is that you guys are going to be expected to clean up. This is a safety piece. Also, this is.
Yeah, it kind of bounced off and rolled around.
All right. So one of it is a safety piece. One of it is because I just don't want to work any harder than I have to. So when you guys are done in the shop, everyone will do a cleanup. That will be what we do at the end of every day. When you are done with a workstation or with a tool, you will be expected to clean up as appropriate before the end of the day. That doesn't mean you have to clean up all this, the sawdust every time you use the saw, because there'll be multiple people using it. But if you have scraps left over, I expect those scraps to end up in the correct location before you move on to your next thing, right? Keep your work site clean. A cleaner work site is easier to have a safer work site. Okay, other things, anything else? We've talked about injuries, reporting injuries. As I said, you guys will be annoyed when I send you down to the nurse for some of this stuff, but that's the way it will happen.
Well,
Is that-
splinter.
I might send you down to the nurse.
What's that?
So don't get splinters,
That's
right? Last year I did, I don't know, like after I found out what the nurse did, I don't know if I'll send people down for splinters.
Yeah, they.
She gives you a band-aid and says it'll suck it out.
Yeah.
That's how that works?
Well,
Yeah,
if I get a
because
splinter,
this
let's
sponge
just put it this way. I'm telling you,
Okay.
It's a guy now.
The guy's
Don't
super
tell me that
nice.
you're not gonna
It's like
tell me.
Well, I
it's
just
gay,
did.
that's why.
Yeah, I know.
It's just like-
Obviously.
That's all I was gonna
Okay.
If it's
Uh,
when he's nice until he's gay.
We've talked about cell phones,
Most straight guys
headphones.
are out.
Okay, safety instructions. How have we communicated safety to you so far?
Oh shit.
With words, right? How many printouts of safety instructions have I given you?
0.
Why do you think that is?
Because we went over it.
smart.
Okay.
Yeah, well, you're smart. Why do you think I am not just giving you a contract that says here are the safety rules you're going to follow, sign it at the bottom?
Because you could just sign it and go.
Yeah, I am smart enough to know that when somebody hands me a sheet of paper that's full and single spaced, my desire to read that sheet of paper is slim to nil, right? And if it is safety requirements, I'm probably like, okay, thanks, and I'm going to sign off. So most of my safety instructions are going to happen like this. This gives me the opportunity to see who's paying attention, who's following along, who I need to make note about that may not be paying attention, those kinds of things. And it also makes sure that I know that you heard the information, right?
13.
Most of your instructions that I provide to you will not be printout instructions. There will likely be at some point a contract that you guys will fill out, but it's going to be all the stuff we talk about. At some point, you guys may be expected to fill something out. I'll probably send something home to your parents. I haven't decided if it's going to be a sheet of paper they'll send home or a email. But to your guardians that will go home and say that there's a possibility of injury and that if they don't want you in the shop, they need to communicate that to me. But I assume all your parents want you working in the shop, right? Anybody think their parents aren't going to want them in the shop?
I've done, let's just say I've done way worse than
Okay.
It's before we remodeled the house.
On accident.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
I'm glad you added that last one.
Yeah. Yeah.
On accident.
Okay.
Positive.
So,
This is suck on the nose.
important thing before we talk more about Cameron attacking her grandmother with a nail gun.
Great pecan pie.
Oh, yeah.
Come on, you gotta be better.
Okay, so how many of you guys know what the OSHA stands for?
Fourth grade.
What does OSHA stand for?
Here's me in fourth
What does
grade.
that acronym stand for? OSHA.
Operation.
Nope.
They can go down in a hole.
So it's Occupational
That's what I said.
Safety and Health Act. So one of the common errors is there is an administration. So the administration was set up because of OSHA, the Act. That is a federal regulation. How much do we have to adhere to OSHA in this classroom?
A lot.
What is our legal requirement to adhere to OSHA in this classroom?
In the hat?
And like,
Thumbs up if you think we have to adhere to OSHA. Thumbs down if
Yeah, that's
you
when I
think
was-
we don't.
That's when I was still using heroin.
Okay, so some of you unsure. The correct answer is that we are not legally required to adhere to OSHA.
Let's go.
Now, here's what I want you guys to understand. OSHA is a federal requirement. This is a state school, so OSHA doesn't dictate the rules here.
Good.
However, we will generally default to adhering to OSHA safe, or what I will do will be more strict than OSHA. So one of the things I want you guys to understand, because I have people last year that would come back and say, why do we have to do this way? I know that on the job site, this is how we do it, right? I may give you stuff that is more strict than a job site, and the reason being that one, I don't want you to get injured. Two, I can't monitor everybody, so if I give you stuff that's more strict, it's less likely to have injury. And three, we're going to go back to the I don't want to fill out paperwork and get sued. So that is something for you to be aware of. OSHA is something we're going to talk about. OSHA is something that we are going to train you on to some degree, and that we're going to talk about that in the workplace. But OSHA is not what governs the classroom. When it comes to this classroom, I am the safety dictator, right? So if I tell you this is what you are going to do, now assume that I'm telling you safe things in this scenario, right? But if I tell you take these extra safety precautions, what I don't want is I don't want people arguing with me about why do I have to do this? I usually weld in my shorts and no shirt, right? Like, which is something that I heard last year. I don't care if that's what you do outside the classroom, but in the classroom, you will follow the safety procedures that I give you. And if you don't, what's the result?
you get
Kicked out and
You're not going to be in the
stuff
shop,
out.
right? You have no legal right. To to participate in all these activities. I can give you alternative assignments if necessary. Okay, so I think that covers everything that you guys need to know at this moment about, oh, sorry, let's talk about one more thing. One more thing that we should talk about. Okay, so most of you guys have used tools before. Describe to me, like, the first time you used a power tool, what your experience was. Gavin? Okay, like, I'm talking about a real power tool. Your first real power tool, how many of you had some apprehension about using that power tool?
That's a big word. What does it mean?
Like some nervousness.
Oh yeah.
It moves your hands around.
Oh yeah.
Well, I was just trying to take it slow.
Yeah, so which one are you talking about? Which tool?
The sander.
Okay,
Oh no, and then the welding thing too. I've used that. That's
okay. So, huh? Yeah, drill counts, but the drill I'm not as worried about. Drill is like, okay. So, this is so good. All right. I need everyone's attention again.
yo, you're fucking.
Thanks, Brayden, for getting Gavin under control while he sat there.
It worked, didn't it?
Okay, all right.
It worked.
Here's the other general principle, the last one, and then we'll move on.
It's breaking my
Is
computer.
that
Stop.
some of you may have used some of the tools, some of you may have used all of the tools, some of you may have used none of the tools. I want everybody in this class to use the power tools, regardless of if you are nervous to use those power tools. But here is how I want you to approach that. If you are worried that you aren't going to be able, if you are worried that you are not going to be able to make a perfect cut or perform a perfect weld on your first time, that's great. Nobody performs a perfect weld. It is normal to not have your first cut on something be a perfect cut. That is not what I am concerned about in terms of if you are uncomfortable or unknowledgeable with something. What I am concerned about is if you step up to a tool that you don't feel 100% confident, and I'm going to make sure that everyone's paying attention to this part, that you need to be 100% confident that you know how to operate that tool safely. If you are not 100% confident that you know how to operate that tool safely, then come talk to me and say, Mr. Hoffman, I need to use this tool, but I can't remember, I'm not 100% sure that I have all the rules down. Will you come supervise me while I work on this, right? Like, I have eyes on everybody, but I'm not going to be like eyes on you on every cut that you make, right? So if you are nervous, come talk to me. I'm also going to set you guys up so that you guys will always work in pairs. One person will be doing something, the other person will be watching safety. And that will hopefully help out there. Okay, any questions about safety?
I'm not orange.
Do you have his orange wheel thing? Yeah.
Oh, that's what those things are?
It's like a stress thing.
I thought it was a cock ring.
Okay.
Cock ring?
Yeah. Yes.
What? They're super comfy.
Okay. Our next lesson
Yeah,
is
you
lesson on what the difference is.
No, I can't.
Give it back.
Okay. All right. You guys will do that at the end of class.
Wait, there's more?
Here's what we're going to do now. So I'm going to turn the projector on.
I gotta piss. Bro, stop fucking with my computer. I'm gonna, like, I swear to God. It's fucking disconnected.
Yeah, they are.
That's so much fun.
Okay, how many of you guys have experience working with concrete? So I know
I have
everybody.
a little bit.
Yo, what is wrong with my computer?
I have like.
How many of you guys have like poured a slab of some kind?
No. Is it kind of if you did it like homemade concrete?
Well, I've mixed the concrete.
Yeah, like a bag of concrete. Yeah. Okay. Okay.
I got
So here is where we're gonna start. Let's see if it projects this the right
My
way.
grandpa, I know. Mr. Hoffman.
All right. Yes.
Down in my hometown back in Florida, my grandfather owns one of the biggest like
That's a nice clean lawn.
concrete companies. So
Okay.
I've helped him a lot with
Okay.
the ironing, like
Okay.
the iron bars and everything.
Like the rebar and all that. Okay. So we're gonna do a little bit of that, not a ton. Okay. So number one, tell me what this sidewalk is made out of.
Concrete.
Concrete. Okay. Is it accurate to also say this sidewalk is made out of cement?
Yes.
No.
No.
It is. It is not. So here is. This is just one of those like annoying like where people get all technical, and I'm gonna get all technical right now. So there is cement in this sidewalk, but this sidewalk is not cement. What is the difference between cement and concrete? Anybody know?
Cement is like pure cement, and concrete is like a mixture of multiple things.
Okay, so concrete is a mixture of multiple things. Yeah.
Cement is called cement and then concrete.
And Braden nailed it. That was what I was looking for. Was all right.
Yeah, man, I know you.
What does cement look like? Somebody describe cement to me.
That.
Yeah.
Isn't it almost like a rubbery?
No, I wouldn't. I mean, I wouldn't describe it as rubbery. No.
It's a darkish color.
Okay. So it's going to be kind of a gray. It's a gray color, but what's the texture of cement?
Very smooth.
Okay. So here is where we're. Yeah.
Well, I don't know. Depending on how good or bad it is, I've seen like bubbles.
Okay. So what you guys are kind of describing is concrete again. Here is what cement is. Yeah.
Isn't it wet?
Well, when we mix it, it will become wet, and then now we're dealing with concrete slurry. So cement. Yeah. So let's talk about this. Concrete is going to be made up of these ingredients. Not all of these ingredients will show up in every mix, but there are 4 of them that will pretty much show up in every, well, actually 5 of them technically, that will show up in every single mix here. All right, so up on the board. This isn't a great picture of cement, but in this other one here, you can see, describe cement to me.
Fine.
It's a powder, right? Cement is a powder. When we mix it in with other ingredients, it becomes concrete. So the ingredients that we're mixing it in with are water, small aggregate, and coarse aggregate. So aggregate is a fancy word to say sand and rocks, right? Anybody know why we mix sand and rocks into concrete?
So you don't strain.
Okay, so there is a strength element, kind of, sometimes, yeah.
It adds stability along with
Okay.
overall stability.
So there is a little bit of stability and strength that's added when we put in aggregate. How many of you guys know how concrete hardens? What causes concrete to turn hard?
Time.
Okay. Gavin's is closer. Time causes it. But what specifically is going on? You know?
Well, like you mix the concrete powders, the actual concrete with water, then it kind of hardens up into a clay stuff, kind of like dough. And
Okay.
then eventually becomes completely hard.
Okay. So what? Yeah.
Temperature.
Evaporation.
Okay. So how many of you guys? I'm hearing a lot of this. This is really common to talk about like heat, to talk about evaporation, to talk about drying out. So one of the things that I really want to drive home with you guys when it comes to concrete is it is not evaporation, it is not drying out, it is not heat that causes concrete to get hard.
Wouldn't heat make it not hard enough?
No, I mean heat will speed up the process. But what's happening with concrete when it gets hard is it is a chemical reaction. What ingredients are reacting chemically in concrete? Do you guys know?
Water and cement.
Water and cement. Okay, so water and cement mixed together, they cause a chemical reaction called hydration, and that process turns this liquid slurry mix into a hardened, finished product, right? And what's going to happen with all that aggregate, the coarse and fine aggregate, the rocks and the sand, so don't get too worried about the aggregate term, but it's basically cement powder, rocks, sand, water, they all get mixed together. That makes a concrete mix. And what happens is that chemical reaction occurs. It actually bonds to the aggregate and fills in the space in between all that aggregate. One of the main reasons that we use aggregate is because sand and rocks are cheap and easy to come by. We're going to watch a video in this class today about how cement is actually produced. You have to have a factory or a plant that's going to take limestone and convert limestone into cement.
There is actually a cement plant
Yep.
nearby.
Yeah, there is. So like up off of like Chicago,
Yeah.
there is a cement plant up there. I'm still like, the question came up about field trips in one of my other classes. I do want to like see, I don't know all the rules about field trips for you guys, but I would like to plan at least one field trip out to like a job site. The cement plant would be another cool field trip, I think, to go out and have you guys see how this happens, right? How the cement, but I'm going to show you a video where you'll at least get to see that in video form today. So what happens is there's going to be water and cement mixed together, and it bonds to the aggregate. This chemical reaction causes it to harden. Now, water is a super important part of this process for a number of different reasons. One is it's what kicks off the chemical reaction with the concrete. It's also what keeps the chemical reaction going. But there's a caveat to that. Anybody know what impacts the strength of concrete?
Different amount of stuff you put in there.
Yeah, so the different amount of ingredients. So the amount of water impacts it in relation to what? You know?
Sand.
Ratio, concrete water ratio.
Yep. So the cement to water ratio is gonna be the number one thing that dictates the strength of concrete, right? So the more water we use, the weaker the concrete is. On Thursday, I'll show you a video where they actually take concrete mixtures, some with low amounts of water and some with high, and they actually put them in a pressure test to show how many pounds of pressure each of them survived, right? The only difference being that they add more water. Why might too much water get added into concrete? Do you guys know why, Gavin? Okay, Daniel, do you know? And then I'll come to you.
It makes the mixture too loose, and overall it makes it harder to fuse together.
Yeah, so we're going to talk, I'll give you kind of a bit of an analogy on that one, but those of you who have worked with concrete, describe the consistency of the concrete. Yeah.
You got to have a somewhat almost evenish amount, but preferably more concrete than water.
Okay, yeah. So they're going to be like some chemicals. So when you're looking at a job, these cement plants and like the architect and the structural engineer will give like a specific rating that they need for their concrete. So it's usually like a 4,000 psi or 5,000 psi. Yeah, but when you work with concrete, what was the consistency? Did you work with?
Yeah, well, just a little bit. It's kind of like batter. Like when you scoop it out and then you slap it down, it's kind of like.
Yeah. So like I describe it as being like a super thick chili.
Yeah.
Right, but probably less runny than a chili. And where are you putting concrete? In between what?
Wood.
Yeah, forms. You have these wood forms, and what's in the way? Rebar, right? So you're having to like snake all this concrete in between rebar into these little nooks and crannies. How well does it go into those places?
It does not cooperate.
Yeah, it does not. How many of you guys have thought you packed enough concrete in, and then when you pull away the forms, you realize that there were gaps in there? Any of you guys experienced that? Okay, so that is a real common occurrence, depending on what kind of setting you're working on. So they actually have vibration tools that they will use that vibrate the concrete. So have you guys used cornstarch and water before, like mix those two?
Favorite.
Yeah, so like when you're not moving it around, it's like really gooey and like flows.
Oh, is that what oobleck
But if
is?
you like hit it hard,
Yeah.
concrete is the opposite. So if concrete sits still, it starts that hydration process, right? The water and the cement are going to start to have their chemical reaction sooner, and it's going to move that chemical reaction along. But when you keep it moving, it prevents that, or it slows that process. It delays that process from going through. So have you guys seen some concrete trucks running down the roads?
Yep, I did.
And what do you notice about those concrete trucks when they're rolling down the road?
The wheels inside.
Yeah, so they have that big old barrel on the back that's constantly spinning. The reason it is constantly spinning is to avoid this hydration process from starting prematurely. The last thing you want is all that concrete getting hard inside of that barrel. So there are things that you can do to stop that. One of those and to delay that process is to keep it moving. So the longer it sits still, the sooner that hydration process starts going to work, right? So that is one of the things to keep in mind when we're doing this. is that the more you move it, so when you use this tool to kind of like vibrate the concrete, it'll actually kind of shake it out, get all the air bubbles out, move, help the aggregate settle. And we're going to talk about that process a little bit more. Gavin?
So then wouldn't like the concrete less water, more like I don't know, more hard?
The harder to work with?
Like over, I don't know, like what you were saying earlier.
Ratio.
Yeah, so here's the best analogy that I think I can give you as far as that ratio piece, right? I'm assuming everybody here has had like Kool-Aid or Crystal Light, right?
No.
No, I better get a referral for.
All right. You guys have had some kind of like lemonade drink or something, right? So imagine that you guys are drinking lemonade or Kool-Aid or one of those things, and you drink half of it,
How do I do that?
and then you fill the glass back up by adding water to that. What have you just done to your drink?
Water.
Yeah, you've diluted it, right? It's not, the flavor's not going to be as strong. It's going to taste watered down. You're going to be able to tell. That is essentially what happens to cement, right? When you have a chemical reaction, it's going to be based off of the quantities of the cement and the quantity of the water. When you mix in too much water, it dilutes that chemical reaction. That's the best way I know how to describe it, is that it dilutes that. Now, it's tempting to put more water in, because those of you who have worked with concrete, you'll actually see this a little bit. The less water you have, the harder it is to work, right? When you're working with like tile, you use something called mortar, which is a cementitious material. That is something that has like almost like a peanut butter consistency that you're going to use. The thicker it is, the less water, the thicker it is, the harder it is to fill in all those gaps, right? So before we move in and talk about how to address that issue, the temptation there is to add too much water.
What's the word?
It ruins that, right? If we add it to the mixture. Now, here's the trade-off to the water, is we talked about how it doesn't evaporate. That's not because of the hardening. Does anybody know how long it takes for concrete to reach full strength?
Like a month.
At least an hour.
Depends on the concrete.
Okay, so we got one vote for a month. Hunter, what's your?
24 hours.
Okay, 24 hours.
About 8 hours.
3 days.
Depends on how thick it is.
Okay, so I probably should have just drawn this up on the board with the other classes that I did. So if you were looking at like the strength on a graph, so this side being the strength, like how many pounds per square inch it can support, and this being the days. So if you have like 5, 10, 15, and so on, right? What happens with the concrete is that its strength does something like this, right? So within the first 7 days, you're going to get a majority of the strength there. 3 days is a really common amount of time before you're going to start like building on that, because we might have, if this is like a 4,000 psi concrete, right? If this is 4,000 pounds per square inch, by like day 3 up here, my graph is probably off. It's probably a steeper climb at the beginning. But by day 3, we've reached a pretty decent amount of that. That's a really common amount of time before you actually start building on it. But it's going to continue to strengthen, unless something is absent from this, right? If the water evaporates entirely from the concrete slab, so let's say you're in Arizona, Phoenix, Arizona, and you're laying a slab in the middle of July, you pour the slab, and then by the next day the heat has dried it out. What will happen to that concrete is that its strength will look something like this, right? You're going to have a lot less. So when you are curing concrete, when you're waiting for it to set up all the way, it is important that the concrete stays wet. So at that point, once it's hard, once the mixture has gone through the whole chemical process of bonding to all the aggregate and becoming a solid object, at that point in time, we want to keep it wet, right? So in a place like Phoenix, it's not uncommon for you guys that you would see, if they're doing things correctly, it's not uncommon for them to maybe even have a sprinkler on top of a slab where the sprinkler is running and keeping the slab wet, or for somebody to be out there with a hose. A real common practice is to put, we'll call them blankets. They're not regular blankets, but they're like basically plastic sheets that are slightly insulated. on top of the concrete and cover them up that way.
You also have to be careful of doing it with like humid air.
Right.
Humid air too.
Yep. Yeah. So we'll talk. So if you're in a place, and this is where we're going to talk about these admixtures. So there are, depending on the climate that you're in. So if you're working that concrete that's super thick because you have a really low water to cement ratio, there's a additive called plasticizer, and what that does is that allows the concrete to become runny without adding water. Right? There's also retardants that slow down the process and prevent the concrete from curing as fast as it normally would. There's accelerants. So if you're in like a cold, humid climate where maybe it's not going to set up as quickly, that it accelerates that process. There's color additives that you can put in, so you can color your concrete if you want to have colored concrete. There are a lot of additives that you can add. So the big things, though, that I want you guys to be aware of is how much water is in the wet mix is going to impact the strength, and how long it stays wet will impact the strength long term, right? So Daniel's thing about a month, 28 days is a really common measure for when it kind of reaches that fully cured. Now, the reality is that graph will kind of continue forever if you keep it wet, that it will very slowly, incrementally continue that process, right? But the bulk of it's going to happen in the first 7 days. So the two worst things that you can do for the strength of the concrete is one, add too much water at the beginning, and then once it's through that hydration process, is dry it out, right? So water is a really weird dance that it has to have with this process. So let's see. So let's talk about safety. Anybody aware of what some of the safety concerns are with concrete?
4-7.
Yeah.
When you're mixing it, it kind of makes the dusty stuff come off, so you gotta keep that in mind.
Okay, so there's an issue of like air quality, right? We're going to talk about how that can be a problem in bigger ways. Yeah. Don't eat it. That should probably be one of my general rules. Just don't eat the stuff that we use in this class. Oh man, see, he's cheating because he can see my next slide on my.
It depends on how much of it is on your hands.
Okay, so what is chemically reacting in concrete? Remind me what's chemically reacting in concrete. Yeah.
Water and cement.
Water and cement. Okay.
See it happen. Oh.
What makes up a high percentage of your body? Water. If cement mixes with your body, what does that create?
Chemical reaction.
A chemical reaction, right. So there is a chemical reaction. I'm going to show you some pictures here. These are what we call concrete burns. Now, we're going to work with concrete. I'm not anticipating anybody here will experience anything like either of these because you guys will wash hands when you're leaving after working with concrete. Anybody have any idea how you get concrete burns on your leg like that guy?
Sticking your leg in
Wash
it.
it off right
Swallow
away
it.
and leave it sit over time. It
but-
will get like hard.
But how would he have gotten concrete burns on that part of his leg?
Oh,
Any
if
idea?
he fell in there, stuck his leg in there.
Kneeling down on like
Okay, they're kind of wrapping like all the way around, right? But a real common thing, and this is actually something that happened on one of the job sites that I was on. One of our concrete guys I'll show you the protective gear that we're using, right? We're going to use these really like almost like heavy duty rain boots and gloves. This is if you're doing like a full slab. We're not going to get carried away like this because we're just doing little models. But if you're doing a full slab, you're going to have big leather gloves, or not leather, rubber gloves, eye protection, and these boots. So on the job site that I was on, that's not a picture from the job site, but I am fairly confident that that person experienced the same thing. We had somebody who got concrete inside of their boots. So they have socks on, right? But the concrete that's in contact with their skin, they got concrete in there. The concrete was in there most of the day. And as the day went on, it chemically reacted with their skin. There's a whole science to it. I don't fully understand the whole science to it. I'm not going to bore you with the whole science, but there's a chemical reaction between the moisture in the skin and the concrete, and it causes burns like that. So that is a real common occurrence within concrete. It is important for you to understand this because You have moisture in your eyes, you get concrete dust in your eyes, it can cause similar burns. Hopefully your eyes flush it out over time, but that is a possibility, right? You have moisture inside your lungs and in your throat, so it can cause damage there as well, right? Yeah.
Like he got so mad he went outside.
So this is some of the stuff we're going to talk about. I'm going to show you a video here. Let's see. Okay, so here's what I'm going to show you. This is a video of a cement plant. And
7 minutes.
we're going to fast forward through part of it.
Should take longer than that.
Did you know the foundation of your house once looked like this? Well, this is a 300 million year old piece of limestone. And today we're going to go into this plant and show you how you take this piece of limestone and turn it into cement.
They've been producing cement on this hillside near Santa Cruz, California for more than 90 years. The plant that's in operation today is owned and operated by RMC Lone Star, the world's largest producer of ready-mix concrete. And it uses the most high-tech and environmentally sensitive processes available in modern cement making. In operation 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, this plant produces nearly 1 million tons of Portland-grade cement each year. The view of the Pacific Ocean is breathtaking from the observation deck of the plant's 300-foot tall tower.
Okay, we're going to fast forward through part of this. He talks about like the history of the plant.
The 24th built
What do you think their names are?
50s.
Bob and Jeff.
24 smart. That's the rotary oven.
Bobby King and
So
Jackie.
they're going to walk through the process of
What did you say?
Bobby King and Jackie.
And then subsequently in 1981,
Those guys are assholes. I hate those kids.
we opened the operation you're going to see today.
The first step in cement making is the mining of the raw materials. This quarry is located 3 miles from the plant where they harvest limestone and shale. Huge boulders of limestone and shale, some as large as a piano and weighing several tons, are dumped into a machine called an impact crusher. After the limestone and shale are pulverized, they're transported to the plant through a long series of conveyor belts. The limestone and shale, along with small amounts of iron ore and clay, are loaded into this huge rotary kiln. It's 185 feet long and 13 feet in diameter. Temperatures inside the kiln soar to nearly 3,000 degrees. This causes a chemical reaction in the raw materials.
Okay, so real quick, because they're going to come back to this, I want you to take note of that 3,000 degrees. They're going to talk about steel and what temperatures it takes to start breaking down steel.
As they slowly begin transforming into Portland cement.
Jesse 911 steel.
Well, steel tends to be formed at about 1,100 degrees and actually melts at about 1,000 degrees, approximately 2,000 degrees. So what we do to keep some of the shell from melting on us is line the kiln. Steel is on the outside, and the actual thickness of the brick, in this case 9 inches, and interacting with another. There's no water in between the bricks. Up around the shell, all the way up to the top where you slide in a keystone, just through the sheer interlocking. So this brick actually insulates that steel.
So they're saying that that big kiln that rotates, steel on the outside, and then the whole inside is layered with that brick that thick to keep that steel from deforming while they're cooking all that lime. How do they have it here? So that's where he's saying that. Do you guys know what a keystone is? So a keystone is like a what's the shape? I'm trying to think of the shape. 4-sided shape where it's
Triangle?
Like angles out on the sides, right?
Trapezoid?
You know, yeah, trapezoid. It'd be easier to just draw it up here, right? So what happens is like they have the kiln and then they have the bricks in here, and there's a brick. A keystone is going to be shaped kind of like this, and then what happens is that when they slide this in, nothing falls in. You'll see them in like archways a lot. So like in an archway, you'll have like brick that piles up, and then there'll be one on the top that's carved out like this. So the pressure the pressure of it trying to cave in is going in towards the ski stone on both sides, and then preventing it from falling out. My drawings are really terrible, but I think the concept
I think
is
we understand.
The art
there.
teacher's right next door.
Huh?
The art teacher's right next door if you ever need help.
Yeah. Okay, so that's what they're talking about with this parade.
For safety reasons, a welder's mask is used to look inside the blazing kiln. At this point in the process, the cement compound is called clinker.
Tell me what's going on here. I see the kiln rotating and I see material falling out of it. What you're looking at is the absolute end of the kiln. Smelly point. So that material right there is processed material just falling out of the rotary kiln down into the subsequently. So to get a fire this hot, you have to use this atomizer Roundup shot into it. Take a coal, put it into a fine powder. It ignites faster, as long as it generates the maximum light you can.
The firing process is closely monitored inside the plant's state-of-the-art control center. Television screens allow the technicians to actually see inside the kiln and monitor the amount of heat that's being generated.
Steve, we're at the bottom of the clinker cooler, and molten material you saw coming out of the kiln, gone through several crates that are blowing up underneath it. Material. Obviously, you can see that some of this material has yet to fully cool. It's still relatively hot. I have some extra material here for you to take a look at. This is clinker. We're almost all the way in there to cement. All we need to do in the processing is add some gypsum, grind it,
I have his card.
and then
I
we're
wish I had
there.
his card.
We
So much money.
manufacture the working cement.
Bro, give me his card before I got this card to get it.
In order to grind the clinker,
So much money, and
dust
it's just
is put in
like
this
they just
giant
took it out of my
ball
account. But it's like
This is where
I'm
the
so
gypsum
nice
is
because this
added
one
as
has
well.
limits on it.
The ball mill is filled with approximately 200 tons of these metal balls.
My mom gave him
As
a
the
budget
mill
card.
spins, the metal balls crush the clinker and mix it with the
So just
gypsum
blow it at a
until it becomes Portland cement. Samples of the finished product are taken to a lab where they're tested for strength and consistency. The
It's
final product
addicting.
is shipped to concrete
Like,
plants and cement
what's something super
manufacturers and farmed by truck and rail.
I know, but not at a
However,
slot
they do
machine.
package some of the cement the old-fashioned way.
Like a slot machine,
They
like,
bag.
especially one of those
This
Vegas ones
guy's
where they
able to
put the
fill
smell
over
in the air.
1,200 bags an hour.
And like, there's
The
the
helmet and air
refrigerators and
supply
stuff.
protects his eyes and lungs
I mean, if you go
from
to
the
Vegas,
dust.
sometimes that's fine, but like, gambling sucks.
First, let's take a look at the
Pointless.
final product
You're
here.
just losing money.
There it is.
Blackjack's fun though.
It is amazing how
I
fine
play
it
poker, I
is.
never played
All those ball bearings turn that, those clinkers into this fine dust.
But like those slot machines are literally like, I want they're programmed
You
so
mix this
much.
with water, aggregate,
You hit one
sand, and we've got
this close to it, and it goes back up. They'll
make our sidewalks, driveways,
shoot stuff.
buildings.
So they want to do it again. And it has gambling addiction has the highest suicide rate out of any single addiction.
All right.
Yeah, because you just spend all your money.
So here's what I want you guys to do for the rest of class.
Got that sheet down.
Is let me make sure it's available, guys.
It is.
Is the safety quiz there? If you click on it.